ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Dreamscape Horsemanship YouTube channel. Today we are going to do a quick little video about our Makati reins. If you've been following us on social media, you've seen a couple of these sneak peek posts about our Makati reins. And this is the very first piece of equipment that's going to be available through our tack line. So we do everything in-house here. Everything is handmade right on the ranch. Nothing gets sent out anywhere else. So I'm holding one of our sets of training Makati reins. This particular set happens to have 2 leather poppers, although we do have sets that also come with 1 leather popper and a tassel, depending on your personal preference for appearance. And just a little bit about our training Makati reins. These ones actually come in 25-foot lengths. We will have 22-foot lengths, which is the traditional Makati rein. We will have some of those in stock in the future, as well as, of course, we can make them in pretty much any custom length. The reason we chose the 25-foot length for our training Makati is actually for a variety of reasons. I made a pair or a set for myself and tested them out, and I actually really enjoyed that length. The very first reason we did that was to reduce waste. We don't want to have buckets upon buckets of scraps that we have to throw away. I don't like having a huge amount of waste, so we do a lot of kind of recycling and repurposing around the ranch, so that way we can reduce the waste. So we wanted that same concept with our tack line. So even if, for when we start doing our leather products, all the scrap pieces will be repurposed into things like the leather poppers or saddle strings, keychains, all that sort of kind of novelty type stuff, so that way we can reduce waste. So that was kind of one of the reasons, but obviously the training aspects of that were the bigger reasons. So the first reason is when you use, for example, a 22-foot Makati, and you wrap and you tie to a boselle or a halter, as you wrap and tie the Makati to that boselle or halter, you're losing a little bit of that length. For most people, that's not a big deal, but for some people, you have to sacrifice in other areas. So you end up with a shorter lead, or you end up with shorter reins. Depending on what you're doing with your horse or how broke your horse is, that's usually not a big deal, and some people prefer riding with a little bit shorter rein. From a training perspective, especially with most of our younger horses or the horses here for refreshers, we prefer to give them a nice long rein so that they can learn how to maintain a gait or carry themselves on their own, so that we're not constantly having to put them where we want. We hate micromanaging our horses like that, so that the 25-foot length gives you the ability to be able to have a nice long rein without sacrificing your length when you're wrapping around your boselle or your Makati. Following that same line of thought, if you happen to be on a larger horse that has a longer neck, same thing. You can still wrap around a boselle, a halter, or to slobber straps like we're going to show you here, and still have that nice long rein available. And then with the 25-foot Makati reins, we incorporate a lot of groundwork into our training program. So any of the horses that come in for starting, they go through a rather intense groundwork program right at the very beginning, and then they learn how to pack the saddle around, and then we actually get on them once they meet the requirements that we want on the ground. And then usually for any of our horses, even the broke ones, we integrate a little bit of groundwork into their warm-up. It just keeps a level of softness to them, and it keeps a level of refinement to their training, as well as maintaining that level of respect that your horse has for you and your equipment and your cues, etc. So a lot of those little issues that people come in with, a lot of that can be fixed with groundwork. So the nice thing about the Makati reins, the 25-foot length, is you can have a halter, a boselle, or slobber straps. You can have that nice long rein still, and you still end up with about 14 foot worth of lead. For some people that's a little excessive. Personally for me, I really enjoy that length. You can have, that way you can have your bridle on. If you're using a cavesson or a noseband underneath, you don't have to worry about having your halter and lead rope handy if you need to do groundwork. So you can just bridle up your horse. You can have that nice long lead to be able to do some groundwork. It's not quite as short as our usual 12-foot lead, so it adds a little bit of length there that you can work on some groundwork refinement. But it's not quite as long as your 22-foot long line that we do with some of the advanced groundwork. So it's kind of a nice middle of the line. And you also are able to ditch the halter if you happen to be going on a trail ride, or you're out on the ranch, you know, checking pastures or so forth. You need to get off your horse, ground tie them. You can tie them. You can also get off and do some groundwork if needed without having to worry about having your halter and lead rope handy. So that's pretty much why we chose the 25-foot length. So I'm going to show you guys how we go about hooking on to slobber straps. So I have kind of a demo pair here that I made, and we're going to have slobber straps available in the future, but we're just waiting on a couple extra tools. So this pair was kind of roughly put together just to work on the concept and see how the Makati reins were actually going to work. So this is actually going to be one of the buckle styles. So you have your slobber strap, it folds over, and this one actually has a buckle. So once your Makati reins are tied, you can actually open and close this buckle without having to untie your Makati reins. So you can take your Makati reins from one bridle to another without actually having to untie them every time. So that's actually kind of a nice feature. We're going to have this buckle style. We're going to have a style that ties instead of having a buckle, so that there's no metal banging against the horse's bit if you have to shorten the slobber strap. And then we're going to have just the traditional slobber strap, which is literally just a piece of leather with a hole in it, so that you can tie your Makati reins that way. Hi, sweetheart. So first things first, you pretty much just want to uncoil. Your Makati reins will come in a coil when you order them, and when we ship them to you or you pick them up, whatever. They'll come in a coil, so you pretty much just want to drop that coil. I always just kind of run my hand through here to make sure there's no kinks in it, and you want to find the end that just has the leather popper. There won't be a knot or any kind of decorative knot, and it's not your tassel end if you happen to have tassels. So because the tassel and the decorative knot that we put on our Makati reins doesn't actually fit through the hole on the slobber straps, and that's actually for a good reason, so that your Makati reins don't untie on you. You actually want to tie the right side first, but by using the left side popper. So how you're going to do that is I'm just going to flip my bridle around backwards here actually, so that it's hanging with the brow band facing forward, as if it would be on a horse, so that the right side of the bit here is closest to me. So I want my slobber strap to be on that side. So we're actually going to thread our Makati rein backwards through our slobber strap. So that way we're going, your buckle is always going to be on the outside. So if I just kind of flip these through the bit like that, your buckle or your tie, if you're using one of those two styles of slobber straps, is always going to be on the outside. So in order to tie the right side of our Makati reins first, we want to go backwards through our slobber strap. So we're actually going to go from the buckle side through to the inside. So we're just going to thread the leather popper through our slobber straps. And especially if you have a new pair of slobber straps and the hole hasn't quite stretched yet, you're going to have to take a minute and just kind of work these through. You might need a little bit of effort there. So there's one, and then we have to pull the other side through. So there's that. And then we want to actually thread this all the way through so that our tassel or our leather popper with the decorative knot is just hanging down here. You want to give yourself a little bit of rope there because we're going to tie this off. So to tie your Makati reins on either side, you're going to have your excess hanging down. You're going to come underneath your slobber strap and up like this, and that creates a little bit of a loop here. You're going to take that excess and you're just going to go through that loop, and then you're just going to snug it up around the slobber strap. Now because this is a buckle style, I want my little flap here that's the extra coming through the buckle to be over top of my reins. That's just my personal preference. Some prefer to have it tucked in. And then you're just going to snug this up. So you're going to pull your long piece through the back of your slobber strap to tighten it up, and you're just going to give that a little snug there. And that is how you tie your offside or your right side Makati. If you don't want that much extra hanging down, you simply pull some up through that loop, and you can pull it through the back side of your slobber strap, like so. And then I'm simply going to undo my buckle, and I can now put this on the right side of my bridle, just like so. Making sure that that piece of leather is up over top. So the nice thing about this style of tying your Makati reins on slobber straps works a lot similar to tying your rope halter. If you do that loop correctly, should it ever over tighten on you, you can simply just push on the loop or push on the offside of your slobber straps or the inside of your slobber straps to give yourself a little bit of slack to be able to adjust them. So we want to tie our reins now, and this slobber strap is going to be on the left side of the bit, again with the buckle facing outward. So we actually want to go through the back of the slobber strap now with our with the same popper end that we went through the right slobber strap. Instead, we're going through the back side, so not the buckle side, and we're just going to work that through. You want to make sure when you're making your reins that you don't have any kinks in the rope. That's why we use this nice yacht braid rope. It doesn't actually kink as easily as some other quality rope. Because once you have these tied, if you have a kink in your rein, it's going to be really hard to get it out without having to untie everything. So we're just going to work that onto the reins. There we go. And now we're going to thread this all the way through. And the easiest way to do this, making sure there's no kinks, is to attach this onto the left side of your bridle, and we're going to tie our reins now. So I'm just going to buckle that real quick. So my preference is to have a full arm's width. So from the crook of my thumb all the way up to my shoulder, and then all the way to the crook of my thumb at the slobber strap. So that's not quite the right length. So I'm going to slide that a little bit further through until I can lift this up. And that's actually a little bit too long now, so I'm just going to snug that through just a smidge. Alright, and we got no kinks, so now I'm just going to take that off. So that's our rein loop. Loop that up there. And then now we're going to tie the rest of it. So same thing, when you're holding your slobber strap here, you bring all that extra underneath, and then we're going to thread all of this back through that loop. And then this becomes your lead, all this excess. And then we're just going to snug that up. I'm just going to pull it just a smidge through there on the back side, so it'll give my reins just a smidge more length, but at the same time it really snugs down that knot. So then you end up with all this as your lead. And then we simply just hook that left side onto our bridle the same we did on the right side. And we pull that through. So then we have our reins with no kinks in them. Our slobber straps are laying nice and flat. And then we have our lead. So from leather popper to the bit end, because my length of my arm from fingertip to shoulder is actually pretty close to 2 feet. So I'm just going to put my finger here, just to give you guys an example, right at the slobber strap here. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and a little bit. So that actually gives us about a 12 and like 4 inches worth of lead with that particular length of reins. So those reins end up being about 4 feet from my hand to the bit. So that's actually not too bad. Allows me to give a nice bit of rein. And then if I want a longer lead or a shorter rein or vice versa, I'll go grab one of the horses, we'll saddle them up, and I'll show you guys how to adjust your reins. Alright, welcome back. So I'm standing here with HPH Blue Oto Chick, also known as Rhythm. She's actually wearing her snaffle bridle for the very first time. So we're going to show you guys how to adjust your Makati reins on when they're actually on your bridle already tied. So just to show you guys how nice the buckle feature is on our Makati reins, I still have them on Trigger's bridle, but I'm actually just going to undo them here rather than change her bridle just because she's already wearing it. So I'm just going to pop them off. Now obviously she's still wearing her halter underneath her bridle just because I was doing a session with her. But obviously the use of your Makati reins, you don't actually need that underneath, but that's okay. So here's our loop rein with both our slobber straps on it. So I'm actually just going to kind of toss that right side over there. And we'll do that one up first. Ooh. So I'm just going to bring it up here to the side of her bit. I'm going to do it up on the right side here, making sure that the Makati loop is tight now that we have them tied. And I actually like the length of that popper. So as she's loping around, it shouldn't, with the weight of the rope and how it's tied to the Makati, it shouldn't bop her in the nose. But that's a little bit of trial and error as we go along. And I'm just going to take this side and loop it on the left side. And make sure it's through the little keeper on the buckle. And then we have all this lead. So I'm actually just going to unattach her halter lead here so we can have a proper demonstration. So she hasn't actually had pressure on the bit yet, so we'll see how this goes. I'm just going to wrap this up a little bit so it's easier to hold. So for a horse like her, with her length of neck, I'm just going to step her up here. This length of rein is actually quite nice. So when I'm up here in the saddle, my arms are going to be up here. So I can hold the end of this and she's still got a nice slack, or I can put my hand forward and she gets all that slack, you know, those first few lopes. And then we can always shorten her length as we need. So we have all this lead rope. So if I decided I wanted these a little bit shorter or longer, you simply come to the left side of the bit here where your lead rope comes out of. And you either push up on your lead rope, or you can pull down on that loop, and that's going to give you slack. So I can pull a whole bunch of slack through, and I can pull back on the back side of the slobber strap to lengthen my reins, or I can put that little bit of slack there. I can pull on the loop, and I can actually thread some rope back through if I want my reins a little bit shorter, and then I just snug up on that loop, give a little tug on the back side of the Makati reins, and then I can snug that up again at my new length. And then we have all this lead rope here. So most people don't like the Makati reins because they have no idea what to do with this. There's a few options. If you're not roping or doing anything that requires the use of your saddle horn, you can half hitch it to your saddle horn. So that's real simple. If I just kind of set the reins up a little bit, I can just bring this up, I kind of loop it around my saddle horn, I make another loop, I bring it back down and I snug it up. Now obviously I'm left with all this extra. You can just kind of coil it up and you can tie it to your saddle strings there. And then if you need to get off, you simply just pull that off your saddle horn and bam, you have your lead rope as you jump down. Another option, depending on what you're doing, if you need to do a lot of mounting and dismounting, you know, if you're doing, if you're checking pastures, checking cows, doctoring cows, you can always just take this and put it a little loop like that in your belt. Don't ever tie it, but you can just loop it like that. You can pull it up a little bit if you need to get rid of that slack, or when you're on the saddle, you can just kind of set it on your saddle horn to get rid of the slack, and then that way if you get off, your horse is always with you. Now, in the event that you fall off and you have your Makati reins like this, because that's a loop, it will just come loose. So if she goes to take off suddenly, not that I think she will with the way her head's down and her feet are, but if she was to go take off, or any horse for that matter, that's just going to pop right out. So you obviously don't want to tie it. You just want to pop it in there and give it just a little bit of a loop like that, just so you have it. I can pull it out. She can pull it out if she goes to take off, or if I fall off and she doesn't quite follow that feel. Because that when I come off, to some degree, that is going to cause a little bit of resistance. Now, if she's super well broke, in theory, she should follow that feel a little bit and she should stop. Now, of course, in the heat of the moment, when a horse panics and you come off, that's usually not the case, is it? My preference, usually when I'm just riding around or doing groundwork, I kind of jump back and forth between that half hitch on the saddle horn if I'm not needing my catch strap, if I'm on a horse for the first few times. So I just take mine and I put a little bit of slack in it so that it's about the same slack as my reins. So that way, as I'm teaching collection or we're loping around and she drops her head, that way she's not going to get the pressure picking up on one side. So I want that the same slack as my reins. And then I simply just take a few coils in it. And then I take my saddle strings right by my latigo keeper here, and I simply just tie them with a little bit of a quick pull thing, and then I take the slack, half hitch it over that, and then your coils are nice and out of the way. I have them short enough that my foot isn't going to get caught in them if my foot's in the stirrup. They're not going to get caught on anything on the saddle, and in the event that she goes bucking around or something happens and she takes off, she's not going to get caught up in them either. And then to take them off, you simply just give a tug on that little quick release thing you made, and then that just comes right off. And then you have your lead rope again. So that's usually my preference. I find it a little bit neater. Especially I'm going to start doing, we're doing Cowboy Challenge this year with some of our horses. Rhythm will hopefully be Cowboy Challenge next year. She'll probably go to some play days this year, but not any competitions. So I prefer just having my Makotis there, because for my preference, it's just a neater appearance than it is to have it half hitched and then coiled and you have some draping. And then another bonus of your nice long lead here, get your head up, baby. Your nice long lead here is that if I have it half hitched on my saddle horn, and say I only have a little bit of slack here, I can take this and I can over under. If she needs a little bit more motivation, I can whip it around and tell her to smarten up on her hind end, and that kind of gives you a nice bit of slack. So you don't have to necessarily ride with a dressage whip or a crop. You kind of have a built-in motivator with the nice leather popper on the end of your lead if you need that little bit of extra get up and go. If you have it half hitched. Obviously the way I do it with all the coils tied to my saddle strings, it doesn't give me that little bit of motivation if the horses need it, but you can always pull that through a little bit. It's going to shorten your coils, but you can pull that through if you do need to. So that is the Dreamscape Horsemanship training Makati. I actually really like the way that this particular color looks against most of our horses. So we have one set left of this black with the red and silver reflective specks in it. It has a nice weight to it. I really like it. It's got a nice feel, a nice weight to it, and it doesn't have, doesn't kink as easily, and it's actually already nice and soft. So if I was to go and hold this like a set of reins, you know, it's pretty movable there.